Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. Joining me today is the number one guest in Off Panel's Power Rankings, as my pal Brandon Burpee returns to the show. And this episode is going to be another special Power Rankings episode, as Brandon and I are going to share our personal rankings for all kinds of subjects related to one of our favorite topics, the X-Men. A couple quick notes before we get started, though. First, if you're a fan of the show, don't forget you can support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. Backing for even just $1 gets you access to exclusive written and audio content, early access to episodes, and more. Second, this podcast was recorded using Zencastr as a pilot run for a potential switchover in that direction. It did not go well, as my side had tons of technical difficulties. Because of that, you may notice some inconsistencies on my side of the recording, but I went through and re-recorded a fair bit of it to fix things up. But let's get on with the show. Brandon, are you ready to talk the X-Men?
I am always ready to talk X-Men. Anytime, any place.
I know you are. But, just to give listeners a little bit of background on us, I want to start by asking you, what was the beginning of your X-Men journey? You were animated series, right?
I was 100% animated series, yeah. So when that cartoon hit, that just changed my entire life. Like, literally. I was all about it. That dictated everything. I mean, even my son's middle name is Xavier. So, I mean, I always like Batman and stuff like that, mostly DC stuff, just because like the old TV shows. Mm-hmm. But X-Men, man, woo! That animated series blew everything out of the water.
We both started with kind of the animated series and like the early 90s X-Men comics. And I do think it's really funny that there's this massive generation of like comic creators and comic related people who all grew up at the same time, right when X-Men was like the hottest shit in the world. In the world of comics, and then we all kind of have this commonality of like early 90s X-Men and Claremont X-Men and all that stuff that is like the tie that binds between us, which is funny. I mean, I think it leads to two things. One, X-Men being like always eternally popular, and then two, it also leads to us thinking that the 90s X-Men comics might have been better than they are. I don't know. I still love them.
Yeah, I mean, I love it as well. And I also love, like, you're talking about that generational thing. When people hear that, da-na-na-na-na, like, there's two types of people. The people who don't know what it is, and the people that look at you and you just know that you're soulmates.
Like, we have a lot of soulmates, Brandon.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm kind of surprised I don't hear that as a ringtone more often.
It's been my ringtone forever. I want my casket lowered to that song. I have told my kids that.
I believe we call that the reverse Blackbird.
Yeah, you just go landing. I want that though. I want it to be like a basketball court that opens up and then my casket drops in and then it closes back up. That'd be amazing.
That's why Danny Granger will eternally be one. No, actually, no. He did the bat. We talked about this before, right? Danny Granger and Pacer did like the bat cave in his house.
Yeah.
I want to be like X-Men. I want to be basketball rich so I can actually build like a basketball court where a like hover jet comes out of and flies me around. That'd be perfect.
Yeah. I just want a huge like replica Cerebro room that looks exactly like the one in the movies and does absolutely nothing, but you're rich and you just don't care. It looks cool.
Yeah. So Brandon and I both grew up on 90s X-Men. We both moved forward with the X-Men and also moved backwards with the X-Men, looking back and moving forward to varying degrees. Brandon, I mean, you've read like every main X-Men book basically ever, right?
Yeah, I've been like last few years working on chronologically going through all the X-Men books. It's a long process.
Does that include like side books like Excalibur?
Yeah. So as new like series came out or mini series came out, I try to like read those and then go month to month, which is awesome for Marvel Unlimited. Like that helps facilitate that in crazy ways, in a much less expensive way sometimes. So
yeah. I was just rereading some of the old X-Men stuff. Like I literally just got done reading the Dark Phoenix saga again. And it's funny because like when I was growing up, I was reading, you remember those like Marvel Masterworks trades, like the hardbound ones, and then they had like the big but like the essential ones too. Like I grew up reading those. And so like I read all of the old X-Men stuff pretty much when I was a kid off of those. But the funny thing is like I feel like I just realized that I haven't read the Dark Phoenix saga since I was a kid.
Oh, crazy. No, I love the Dark Phoenix saga.
No, I mean, it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it was funny rereading that. And you're like, this is like reading this again for the first time. I've definitely read this before, but yet I haven't read it since I was like 8, which is funny.
Yeah.
It was a way different experience reading it at 34.
No doubt. No doubt.
So now everybody knows where we're coming from contextually as we dive into the power rankings. What Brandon and I are going to do is they're going to have certain categories with a certain amount of picks we have to do. It was like the Ryan Stegman episode I just did with him, except for it's pure X-Men, and Brandon and I are both answering. We're going to share our rankings, and then we're going to discuss. And Brandon, we're going to start with an important subject, maybe the most important subject, because like for you and I feel like we grew up a time where X-Men were particularly art-driven. Brandon, who are your 4 favorite X-Men artists of all time? They don't have to be in order unless you want them to be. Go.
Okay. So my 4 favorite, in no necessary particular order, except for this first one, Jim Lee.
Yeah, same. Number one.
That's number one for me, just because as far as where I came into the X-Men, he defined everything about the look of the X-Men for me. The cartoons were that way, the comics were like that, and that was all his style. So that to me is just, I can't escape those costumes and those characters, and that's a lot because of him.
I do want to say that I think that's the underrated part about Jim Lee is like I think that my love of Jim Lee at the time when he was doing the X-Men was probably as much as I've ever loved any comic artist.
Oh, for sure.
And the underrated part about him though was, like you said, he like designed those costumes. Like his costumes were so on point and like so like inseparable in my mind. Like X-Men Apocalypse tapped into that when they had like the ending where you see Cyclops' like totally whack but also amazing costume that he designed.
Yeah.
Like seeing that was such a thrill. But anyways, who's next?
After that, I'd have to put Frank Quietly in there.
Good pick.
Just because it's one of those situations where when they announced that him and Grant Morrison were coming in, they first started showing pictures. I was fanboy raging. I was like, "What the hell did you do to the X-Men?"
Why is Wolverine wearing a jacket and with his chest showing?
Why does he have dog tags? God damn it, Hugh Jackman. So there was just all this shit. But like now looking back, I absolutely love rereading the Grant Morrison Quietly stuff. And like after a few issues, they got me to buy in hook, line, and sinker. But so just for the sheer fact that like it is an iconic stage of the X-Men. It was such a drastic, diversion or side trail from anything that you'd ever seen with them. And it just still holds up and looks so good.
He's also somebody else who like designed a new look for them too, which is like
he just like redefined it, like how they looked for a good 6 years.
Yeah, to the point where, and my number 2 is John Cassidy, and we'll get into Astonishing more later on. But I mean, like to the point where, like when Astonishing happened, they like specifically kind of reverted back away from that look because they wanted to go back to the classic. It was like them making a very deliberate choice, saying we're going back to this other look. Except for like Beast was wearing like X pants, which was weird.
Yeah.
But Cassidy for me is like he's just such a classic artist in a lot of ways, and like he fit. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of visual homages to stuff that like preceded it, and he just really like was a quintessential artist for the X-Men in my mind. And like my number 3 is John Byrne. Naturally, he's probably gonna be on your list too, and or maybe I don't know. And John Byrne, like I feel like Cassidy was kind of like doing a lot of after Byrne stuff. Ooh, that's actually kind of sweet. Like the after Byrne.
That is hella sweet.
But I mean, like Byrne, I think that most people, a lot of like longtime X-Men fans would be mad at us for having Jim Lee first. But I mean, time and place. But Byrne is really kind of the quintessential all-time X-Men artist, and there's a good reason for it. His stuff is amazing. Him and Claremont like both defined X-Men in many ways, and Cockrum was a big part of that too. But Byrne was most essential element to it. All right, what's next for you?
So Byrne is definitely not on mine, and unfortunately, I have a lot of like, I don't know, just ones that for me, just I don't know, like Leinil Yu is my next one.
Oh.
His Wolverine to me is just Wolverine. Like I love Leinil Yu's Wolverine, and as a giant Wolverine fan, and as a giant X-Men fan, like anything Leinil Yu does on the X-Men, I am just fucking there. I will pay whatever you want. So yeah,
you're like that for Leinil Yu across the board, though.
I love Leinil Yu, but I love the X-Men. So when you put the X-Men with Leinil Yu, my head just explodes.
And stylistically, he is so perfect for Wolverine too.
Oh my god, just the grittiness and the visceral energy that comes off of his work is so perfect for Wolverine.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And I'm just throwing this out there. I think our number 4 is going to be the same.
I'm interested to see.
Botchalo.
It is not.
Oh, Botchlo for me. Gen X obviously is huge 90s kids. Gen X was a huge part for us. Came back, did Uncanny stuff. He did Wolverine and the X-Men, and he was awesome on it. I love Wolverine and the X-Men is like maybe one of my all-time. Is it fair to say that's kind of an underrated X-Men book? I don't even know. Like I just think it's a great X-Men book, and he was a big part of that. So he's my number 4. Who's your number 4?
My number 4 was hard because I honestly was like, okay, because I had to have like a side list. It was like Botchlo, the Cuberts, like
Yeah.
trying to like nail these down. And when I really came down to it, my fourth one had to be Mike Allred.
Oh, Ecstatics.
Ecstatics, because that book like was another one of those at that exact same time as New X-Men, where it was like, what are you doing to the X-Men? But when it came out, I was sold after the first
Mm-hmm.
issue. Like in his art, I mean, I always enjoyed him with Madman and stuff like that. But just that book in general was so good and one of my all-time favorite X titles. So his art was way more than 50% of my enjoyment of that book. And just I absolutely love it. Like, I mean, Dupe, come on, Dupe.
Yeah.
Like,
Who was your last cut?
um, my final cut came down to the Kuber brothers,
Yeah.
Botchelo, and Jerome Opeña for his Uncanny X-Force work.
My final cut was actually Alan Davis because as I was revisiting this, I realized I'm like, I really loved Excalibur. I really loved Excalibur.
I'm not a big Alan Davis fan, man. I don't know why. I don't know why. I feel like there's something wrong with me.
No, his mouths are kind of weird.
Yeah,
I,
mouths, nose, faces.
existences, art, just
Yeah,
general.
like I mean, I'm not. I mean, so many people love his stuff. So by no means am I saying he's not a good artist, because obviously it's me that's missing something here.
It's a personal preference thing.
Yeah. So I mean, he doesn't make me not buy a book. That's for sure.
I think for me, it's largely that I love Excalibur, and he's such an important part of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's the funny thing is I love X Factor, but I'm not a huge Larry Stroman fan, and so
Right.
like that guy never got anywhere close to my list. But I think it's kind of funny that that is a I don't know. There's always like stylistic lines in the sand, but I do want to say that that does speak to the X-Men's greatness is the fact that there are diverse enough styles in there that there are ones that can drive us wild. I mean, look at Chuck Austin. We're probably not going to talk about him later, but that's a stylistic choice that was not very people didn't really love in the X-Men.
Not at all. And narrowing it down to 4 was so difficult because
Yeah.
there's so many artists. I mean, you could have still done stuff like Joe Madera,
Oh,
guys
yeah.
like that. Like there's so many that, maybe people don't think about anymore that but at the time were so huge.
And we didn't even mention
Yeah.
Jack Kirby.
Yeah, seriously. What kind of list can you have where Jack Kirby just gets not even mentioned?
Yeah, no, I mean it is a comic. It is a series that I think in a lot of ways has been defined by the artist as much as anybody. I mean, it's like look at the '90s. Like you talk about Lee and you talk about the Kuberts and you talk about Madureira, but you don't really talk about Labdell or Fabian Nicieza as much.
Liefeld.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways, all right. So next question, next category is three favorite characters who died and came back. And for listeners, anybody who hasn't read the X-Men, I feel like you have to even be tangentially aware of the fact that the X-Men die and come back a lot.
A lot.
What do you got?
All right. So my number 1 has to be Jean Grey.
Of course, my number 1 too. Like any other choice would be just fraudulent.
Yeah. How do you have a resurrection category and not put the Phoenix in that? That's just silly.
And beyond that, like how many times has she died and come back?
Right. And it's like
She literally just did again.
she is the face of what you just talked about with the X-Men, that they just die and come back all the time. But it's amazing because she stayed dead for like 10 years.
Right.
Like that's impressive for the X-Men. People don't stay dead that long. Not somebody as important as a Jean Grey.
Incredible death stamina. Just unbelievable.
I mean, just slow clap.
Boom. Good job. Good job. Now she's back though. She's number 1.
Yeah.
She's my number 1
But for
too.
how
Well,
long?
let's see if she eats a sun or a planet or varying things. I don't know. She could do all kinds of things. Number 2 for me though, I particularly loved both Colossus's death, given the fact that it was a glorious sacrifice for finding a cure for the legacy virus, but also he came back in an amazing way in the first arc of Astonishing X-Men. It blew my freaking mind when it happened. So that's like a big, like the combination of the good death and the good resurrection, plus the fact Colossus to me is an essential X-Men. Big pick for me.
So my number two is actually Colossus as well
Yeah,
for the
boy.
exact reasons you gave. Like his death issue, that cover where he's holding the little hyperdrolic syringe thing,
Yeah.
like, oh man, like everything about that issue. Because I was like, it was at a point where I'd read enough X-Men comics where crazy shit had happened, but not a lot of like big name characters died
Right.
during that like early '90s stretch and into the late '90s. So when like you get to that point and he does it and he dies, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, did they really just fucking kill Colossus?
Right.
Like, holy shit. And then, yeah, and then in Cassidy's run in Astonishing, when he comes back, you're like, oh my God. So just like the beginning and the end, just the full bookend of that story was so well done.
And I also think that like Colossus low key had the most like emotional arc of any character in the 90s. Like
Yeah.
any X-Men character in the 90s, because like with with Ileana and like becoming an acolyte and all that stuff. I mean, there was a lot going on with him. Like he had a lot of shit going on, and it was a culmination of him having like a hero's death and then a hero's return. And plus Kitty was the one who found him, which was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you figure like at that time, like the whole analogy that was really being pushed was like, for Magneto and Xavier was like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. So you have a character who goes through some trauma and is like, wait a minute, maybe we're doing this wrong. And so like Colossus was such a great like I don't know like moral pendulum at that time in the '90s, like between the two. Like he's low key one of the more influential characters of that time, just because again, like with his sister and everything he was going through and switching sides. Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I remember when he became an acolyte, that was like heartbreaking for me because I'm like,
It
yeah,
was
you're
insane.
you're so essential, buddy. What are you doing? You can't do
And he'd always been such like a good guy. And
right.
then I was like, wait a minute, you're going to join Magneto? What the fuck?
Yeah, it's wild. It was wild. All right, who's
Yep.
three for you?
Oh, by far, without a shadow of a doubt, Maggot in Necrotia.
I knew it was going to be Maggot. I knew it. I knew it.
Yep. I was so happy when I saw him on that little panel showing that he was still alive at the end of that. Woo.
All right, my third one, weirdly, just because of personal importance, and I don't support this at all because, in my opinion, the way he died was dumb, and the way he's coming back is currently probably dumb. But it's Wolverine because it's Wolverine. Like I just want Wolverine back, and so I'm just so happy he's back. And the fact that like he's basically unkillable, so they decided that they had to turn him to like an adamantium souffle or something to like kill him ish. Do you think he was just like hanging out in there? Like, is that actually what was? He wasn't actually dead. He was just like statuized, and he's just like looming inside of it, being really bored. Is that what happened?
He's just counting bottles of beer on the wall the whole time.
Oh my god, so many bottles of beer, so much taunting of himself with a lack of beer. But yeah,
Yeah, he'd be frustrated.
the other one that was close for me was Nightcrawler, but at the same time, like I also find that Nightcrawler's death and return were kind of stupid.
Yeah, his death was hella stupid. I didn't like that whole crossover anywhere.
Yeah. Anyways, more or less we talk about those deaths, the better. All right. So next category, we're going to talk about the X-Men movies. We're going to rank them, not including the solo movies, just X-Men to X3 plus First Class to Apocalypse, 1 through 6. This has got to be hard order. We can't just randomize this. I'm going to go first. Ready?
You starting at 6 or you starting at 1?
I'm going to do 6 through 1. I'm going to do it
Perfect.
straight out. All right. You ready?
Yep.
X3, Apocalypse. X-Men, the first one. X2, First Class, Days of Future Past. Boom.
Nice.
Yeah. And actually, I have to say, when I was thinking about it, I almost put First Class first, which was kind of interesting.
Not me.
No. I really like First Class. I think it's really good. And also,
I like First Class, but like it was more or less like serving me up and getting my palate ready for what was to come.
that's true. It was kind of like the appetizer to Days of Future Past.
Mhm.
Although I'm going to throw some quick slander before you put it number one. I find that revisiting X2 and X-Men they don't age well. That's my take. Go for it.
All right, number 6, X-Men Last Stand, X3. Terrible fucking movie.
It's so bad. I mean, like Apocalypse wasn't great, but X3 was bad.
Yeah. And then honestly, that's the only one I didn't like. The rest of the movies I like. So
Yeah.
where these next ones are in order is not because I find any of them bad. It's just how they fell in the order. Number 5, First Class. Number 4, X-Men. I agree with you. X-Men doesn't hold up quite as well. I even would argue that 4 years after that movie it came out, it didn't hold up that well.
You know what happens to a superhero movie when it gets shocked by lightning?
Everything,
The
like
same thing as everything else.
I love that was a Joss Whedon quote too.
I know, it's so amazing. The fact that they let him write astonishing after that is kind of
It's
amazing.
astonishing.
It is astonishing.
Number 3 for me is X-Men Apocalypse. Number 2 is Days of Future Past. Number 1 is X2. And I know you say it doesn't hold up, but I just watched this movie like 2 weeks ago, and I still love that movie.
A lot of it does. Like, I look back at those movies and I feel like if they were done now with the same story and even like almost the same cast, they would have been better. And I don't know why. Like, I feel like James Marsden should have been better as Cyclops. Like,
I think he was a great Cyclops.
I know. I mean, he played the Boy Scout well and everything like that, but he was just kind of like a zero to a certain degree. But I guess Cyclops is kind of a zero to a certain degree.
Yeah, when he's at his best.
It's like, guys, stop having fun. We have to train again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that like they hop in the car and he's like listening to boy band shit, like that's phenomenal. Like the little small touches were so good.
Yeah. Stryker was a very good villain. Brian Cox was awesome as him.
Yeah. And Wolverine tearing people up, all fucking veins popping out that first time in the mansion was just like, oh my God, that's so awesome.
That was definitely the first time we got like the full Wolverine, which sounds like like a sequel to the full Monty, where it's just like very hairy men.
Never go full Wolverine.
Never go full Wolverine. No, I mean, I need to revisit X2 again, but there's some parts in it where I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I feel like I should like it more, and I don't know why I don't. But there are a lot of really good parts in it, and it does have Pyro, a character I've always actually really appreciated, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I thought the whole Rogue Pyro Iceman side story was really good, and then when they brought in Kitty and X3 and all that, things fell apart.
Right.
But,
God, I still can't believe how badly wrong they got Kitty. And then she came back and she had like the magic ability to send Wolverine back into the past. But who cares?
Yeah.
Whatever.
I love that movie, but yeah, that makes no sense.
I mean, I like how they didn't even bother trying to explain it because whatever, it just works. It's like, oh, I just phased into his brain and sent him to the past. Fine, whatever, X-Men.
I wish like when they do stuff like that in the movies, like Deadpool should do something like this. So you like break that wall and put like an asterisk and then a box on the bottom that explains it. And then like just like nerds.
Oh, just editors note it basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like have little editors notes, little caption boxes.
That'd be hilarious. I don't know. I kind of appreciate Days of Future Past just being like, fuck it, whatever. We don't have a better answer for this. So we're just gonna do this. Whatever.
Accept it, nerd.
Suck it in your face. All right, next category, the 3 best X-Men related bases. And, for a note to everyone who's listening, this doesn't just have to be X-Men. It can be X-Factor, Excalibur, even villains. I'm underlining the last one because that will be on my list. What do you got, Brandon? You want to do reverse order? Did you actually rank these?
I mean, I could rank these.
Mine are ranked.
Okay, yeah, I can rank mine.
Okay, go.
So number 3 would be the Outback.
Ooh, that's a good choice. It was my 4th.
Yeah, like I don't know why, but I love that era of X-Men. Like that was one of the first eras that when I started going back and like buying back issues for the X-Men, those were like available in abundance and cheap. And so I was able to like get a lot of those. And so I just really came to love that era. And then like that's where Jubilee's coming in and the cartoons out and it just that whole era. So for whatever reason, the Outback always has just kind of struck me as one of my favorite places.
Really quick, I do want to say that I think X-Men are really interesting for me as a fan of comics in general, is like more than any other type of comic or any other comic story. Like my brain is permanently altered just by nostalgia. It's I look back to those times and it's like hard for my brain to separate like quality from the fact I just like straight up love it. And that's kind of funny.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to be upfront. My entire list of lists here that we've got are all absolutely not necessarily based on quality, but a lot of fucking nostalgia. A lot.
My number 3 is Muir Island because a lot of reasons. It's Excalibur's base. A, B, Moira McTaggart lives there, and I love Moira McTaggart. Also, side note, I love Rose Byrne, so her getting cast as Moira McTaggart was huge for me. That was really big. And just Muir Island, I like the idea that they have this like separate like kind of foothold on another continent, which is pretty awesome. That's my number 3. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Avalon.
Oh, Avalon.
Love it. Like I again, that period of time, they're like going up there into space and Colossus is going with them and they've got the acolytes. And I just remember thinking like, this is amazing. Like, cause I'm a wrestling fan too. And so like you have groups of wrestlers and they call them stables. And so I was just like, dude, this Magneto Acolyte stable is just incredible. Like this is they've got so many cool people and they just brought in Colossus. Like, yeah, and just the idea that they're living in space and they have the ability to rain down missiles if, the humans come up and mess with them. Like Magneto just seemed like a legit villain with a base like that.
Yeah. I mean, mine is like basically like the same, and it's Asteroid M. It's like the precursor to Avalon. I do think it's funny that like Magneto just kept building like space stations. First one got fucked
and it
up,
never worked
what's
out.
That?
And it never works out, but he always goes back.
Well, I mean, like you're living in space. What happens if like your base breaks? You're dead.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, he's like, I can do like a magnet bubble thing. Everybody else is fucked. Fuck.
Exactly. Yeah. Who cares about Fabian Cortez anyways? That guy sucks.
I do.
I actually like Fabian Cortez.
I do too.
I actually was like noodling around with trying to find a way to include him into this conversation. Boom. Did it.
Score!
Number one, obviously, Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, right?
Yep, Westchester, absolutely.
I mean, it has to be. Like, it's I don't know. It's funny. Like, I love all the other bases for the X-Men, but at the same time, it's like it always just feels right when they're at Westchester.
Yeah, and for me, like X-Men are a soap opera, and soap operas rerun some of the same storylines over and over. And one of my favorite X-Men soap opera storylines that gets run over and over is the X-Mansion getting destroyed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're always getting destroyed. Everybody knows where you live, but it always seemed pretty badass that they didn't care and they stayed there.
Right,
like,
exactly.
You can come get us. But now all of a sudden they're running all over the place. Now they're living in Times Square, but it's like, come back. Like, come back.
Yeah, isn't it Central Park?
Yeah, Central Park. You're right. I'm sorry.
I was like, if they lived in Times Square, that'd be very
problematic. Yeah.
They're going to have a lot of people around them all the time. I mean, I guess they still would in Central Park, but still.
I would love to see the layout of that base.
I do think it's funny. It is like a super like heat check, basically. It's like, we don't give a fuck. We're just going to keep living in this mansion. You know where we live. We're going to put out our address. We're not going to hide. Come get us. And then they do over and over and over and destroy it over and over and over.
And it's such a staple of the comics that it was even in the cartoons. Like if you watch any of the cartoons, at some point or another, the X-Mansion gets destroyed. Like It just is what it is. It's such a huge staple of the X-Men that we haven't had the opportunity to witness in a while.
I do want to say that an underrated time for the X-Mansion for Xavier's School was when Genosha was living, or like baby Genosha, or whatever the fuck it was living underneath it, and Wolverine and the X-Men was kind of like a security system. Like that seemed like a good idea.
Krakoa?
Oh, Krakoa, my bad. Genosha.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I mixed up my islands. One's sentient, the other one's dead. Dead? Is it dead currently? Did they resurrect Genosha? Can they resurrect Genosha?
I don't know. It got blowed up. It got brought back. It got blowed up again. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, pour one out for the millions of mutants that were killed there.
Genosha's a silly place.
So next is 5 favorite non-main X-Men characters. This is really tough. So for listeners, I explained it to Brandon as basically the divide is Bishop counts as a main character, but Forge doesn't. And if that makes sense, then you understand my brain. Like
I thought it made sense. I took it as to be like, if you're looking at the Oscars, it's like the co-star award.
I mean, the supporting actor versus actor.
Supporting actor. Yeah, exactly.
Like Bishop is main enough that he can become like a main character. Like Forge was a main character-ish, but he always kind of felt secondary to other characters. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, but at the same time, like I was a little lenient on this because some of my characters are main characters, just not in primary X-Men books. So I totally cheated.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fine.
I'm going to start. You don't have to order it. But Multiple Man Jamie Madrox is one of my all-time favorite characters in any comic. And then another person on my list is Layla Miller. So those two are like main characters in X Factor, but they were never really X-Men. I guess Jamie was never really an X-Man. But anyways, those two are definitely on my list because like they were just core mutants to me. I love them, and they were always kind of underrated in my book. What do you got?
Mine is Lilandra. Always one of my favorites.
That's your number one?
Are we doing number one?
Well, I mean, we can. I mean, we got 5 of them, so just whatever order you want to do it in.
Okay, that was my least. So just, I always liked her coming through, and anytime she was coming into the stories were good. She was always kind of like somewhere in the mix as Xavier's love interest. Mm-hmm. Like, so, and then again, with the cartoons and the way they did the Phoenix Saga and stuff like that, like Lilandra's dope. I love all of the Shi'ar shit.
And also, like, an underrated base that isn't really a base is just space for the X-Men. Because, like, when they do, like, space X-Men stuff, it almost always is pretty amazing.
Yeah, almost always.
I do want to say that I actually feel like Brubaker's space run was pretty underrated.
Brubaker Space Run. What was it? Well,
Remember when it was him and Billy Tan, and they, like, went
yes.
into... Yeah, that was
That was
good. That was a good... It
I
was...
honestly really enjoyed Brubaker's run. I really enjoyed it with like Warpath and all that.
Yeah, that was a good
Yeah.
book. And it involved, like, the Starjammers, and it had, like, a lot of stuff I really liked. But anyways, sorry, off topic.
No, you're fine, because that was a good era, because then you had Mike Carey on the other X-Men.
Yeah, Mike Carey's stuff was really good, too.
Oh, that was a good time.
Yeah. Anyways, all right, do another character.
Okay. My next would be Moira McTaggart.
Hell yeah, on my list, too, obviously.
Another one that I just, anytime she came into the mix, awesome stories followed, almost always. And she was always like, you know, the heart of everything, and just had so many connections to so many different characters. So like her death was crazy to me, because it was like, holy shit, like that's a pillar of the X-Men family. You just took her out.
They also had to kill her son, which was unfortunate, but I guess he's back now. He's always
back better than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually one issue back on Astonishing, so I don't know how better than ever, but he's green and he's of varying sizes, which seems like a problem.
Yeah, he's definitely I won't say much. He's definitely ready to go.
All right, do one more character, because I've done 3.
All right, my next one is, I can never remember the name of the character, but the little Bamf from Wolverine and the X-Men.
I don't think the Bamf had a name, because they were all like little demons, right?
Yeah, but there was the one that always stole the whiskey and all that stuff.
Oh my god, those guys were amazing.
Like there was the one in particular that like always stuck around.
Was that Wolverine and the X-Men, or was that Amazing X-Men? I guess they were in both.
Yeah, I think he carried over.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one. It always just cracked me up. Like during Botchalo stuff, like he would just be in random places doing random shit with like whiskey bottles, and it was just like, this is amazing.
I truly don't think he had a name.
Okay.
I think he was just Bamf.
Okay, that would explain it, because I was looking everywhere. I'm like, what was this thing's name? And I couldn't find anything.
You know, Wolverine and the X-Men in general has like a laundry list of characters that can make it, because like, I mean, Kid Gladiator obviously was amazing.
Yes.
But my pick is actually going to be Brew. I'm going to throw Brew in from that, because
Nice.
I love like little genius, like schoolboy Brood character, because the Brood are amazing, and the idea of turning him into a not feral monster that's going to lay eggs in your body is like kind of amazing, really. And like, he was a really charming character, and he was like the total straight man relative to the rest of the cast. He was really awesome. All right, what do you got for? Do you have 2 more? 2 more.
Two more. My next one is Cecilia Reyes.
Oh, you were always a Cecilia Reyes super fan.
Always. Like there was, I mean, she came in with Maggot, like that whole, and it was like Maggot and Marrow, her Cyclops, like. I don't know why, but I love that little setup.
Wasn't there like Thunderstrike, or there's like a Warpath in there too, or a Thunderbird?
Oh, Thunderbird 4, Neil Shapara.
Yeah,
that came along.
So many Thunderbirds. Stop naming yourself Thunderbird. You're gonna die.
Oh man, I love that guy. It's like Neil Shapendar. Yeah. So, So I don't know. I always like her, and like when they did the X-Men the End books, she was like a big part of that, because her and like Bishop were in there, and not Bishop, but Beast, like her and Beast little kind of on and off again thing, and then her and Iceman's thing during occupational, or not occupational, Operation Zero Tolerance.
Oh,
maybe.
right.
Occupational. Yeah, so like I don't know, she's another one of those characters where like she pops up and fun things happen.
I actually there's a lot of the Doctor characters that I always really appreciate. Like, I like Dr. Nemesis. I thought he was super fun too.
Yeah.
Like, it just, especially because he was like a super dick, and like I appreciate that about him. My 5th character is maybe he's number 2 for me. He's because Madrox is always my number 1 for me, but it's freaking Pete Wisdom. I love Pete Wisdom. He was probably my favorite Excalibur character. He shoots like hot blades out of his hands and is like seemingly just a drunk. And I feel like Warren Ellis just wanted him to be around so he could have like a Warren Ellis character in there, but he was amazing. And also he had like, he did another, he did the Wisdom book. And then there was like Captain Britain and MI13 where he was tangentially involved. And like that guy is his wins above replacement, to use a baseball stat, is like super high, because whenever he shows up, he's just like Mike Trout. He's killing it. And I love that guy. I wish he was around more often. Who's your last one?
That's awesome. My last one is Dupe.
Oh God, I knew I was really considering Dupe, but I was like, I know Brandon's gonna bring up Dupe.
I love Dupe. Dupe is just Dupe. He is amazing. And the whole Dupe language, I love being able to just read that and see his side comments. Like, he's awesome.
I like to think that you can actually just read dupe speak on like site at this point.
I used to be able to. I'm a little out of practice, but I used to be able to. I loved it. Like during the whole X Force, Ecstatics run, like, oh man, I could literally just sit there and read it because they had put out the little chart, which was such a great promotional thing. The
Mhm.
little guide on how to, read his stuff, and I had that next to my computer in high school. And so, yeah, I would just sit there and read Dupe speak. It's great.
Didn't you present the idea one time that they should do them in the movies, but they should like only have it in dupe speak and subtitles in the bottom, so you have to translate it?
Yes, it'd be hilarious because it'd be another one of those things where like only the coolest of cool people would know what the fuck's happening.
No one would have any idea what was happening. Like it would be you and like 4 other people, and it would be
Again,
amazing.
coolest of the coolest.
Like Mike Allred and like Peter Milligan would be like 2 of the other people.
That's company I'm willing to keep.
I love. So I had Jerry Duggan on my podcast. I don't know if you're reading Infinity Countdown, but in the Infinity Countdown Prime that Allred did. Wait, no, it was the shit. I always get this wrong. It was the Warlock issue.
Ooh, that was a good issue.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but in like all of the dead bodies that like were going on, there was like this big splash page with dead bodies everywhere, like presenting a future that could happen. Dupe was in there, and apparently Jerry Duggan was just like, I just draw a bunch of people in there, and he's like, of course, Allred was like, fuck it, I'm gonna put in Dupe.
That's amazing.
So Dupe's body is in there, as if Dupe could die. Dupe is unkillable.
I have to go back and look at that.
All right, so next category. This is gonna be a quick one. I'm just mostly doing this for spite. 3 best Wolverine costumes. I'm gonna go first. Number 3, Brown. The Brown costume is good. It's not his best costume. I like it. I don't love it. Number 2, I love Patch. I'm a huge fan of Patch. I love Wolverine wearing a suit and an eye patch and like just like being debonair. And then number 1 is Yellow and Blue, the classic. That's the only pick. It's the way it has to be. Brandon, what do you have as your top 3?
All right, so my number 3 is the Age of Apocalypse costume.
I almost went there.
All that. That's just such an awesome look. Number 2 is kind of out of left field, but I've always enjoyed it. It's the costume he wore in X-Men Evolution, the cartoon.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That orange and black look just looks so cool. And then the number 1 has got to be orange. No, I'm just kidding. Yellow and blue.
It's got to be Yellow and Blue.
Absolutely, like 90s era X-Men animated series with like the pointy ears, the little tiger stripe things on the side. Not certain why he's a Wolverine running around yellow and blue other than Michigan.
Exactly.
But amazing looking.
Yeah, the funny thing is there's this guy who helps run or is one of the people who runs a comic shop in Dublin called Big Bang Comics, Bruno Batista, and we perpetually sass each other for which costume is the best. He's Team Brown, I'm Team Yellow and Blue because I'm not an insane person, so I had to include this just to make sure that we have 2 votes against him.
I like it.
All right, next 3 favorite X-Men writers. This will be an interesting list. Are you gonna rank yours?
Whew.
You don't have to.
My number 1, I know. My other, no, I could rank this. I could do this.
Okay, go.
Do you want me to just shoot all 3 off?
Do all 3.
Okay. I'm going to say number 3 is Rick Remender.
Okay.
That any Uncanny X-Force run for me is one of the all-time greats. Like, everything about that was amazing. Like, that's one of those books that I have, like, the omnibus, and I will reread that shit annually. Like, it's just so good. Number 2 for me is Larry Hama.
Ooh,
because
Wolverine.
Really, honestly, Wolverine, when he was writing Wolverine, that's again when I came in from the X-Men animated series. And when I came in from the X-Men animated series to buying X-Men comics, I could only get like one comic whenever we went. So it was like X-Men or Wolverine, and I took Wolverine every time. And so that was Larry Hama stuff. So some of that stuff is like the most, like the biggest pillar for me in the Wolverine character is a lot of what Larry Hama put down there just from nature of coming in at that point.
I do want to say Hama doesn't make my list, but he is so essential to my fandom of Wolverine and comics in general because of that run.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's so hard to separate him from like just my childhood, basically.
Exactly. Like just coming in when we came in, like for me, Wolverine and Larry Hama are like in the same breath.
Yeah.
Like I just can't imagine having never read his run. Like that would be a travesty.
Mm-hmm. And number 1?
Is Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont. I mean, come on. Anybody who's ever heard me ever talk about the X-Men knows that was my number one pick.
I waited in line for you to get a signature with him once, and we had to wait a while because like there was people getting CGC signatures or whatever, so they had to like set up their contraptions and whatnot. So and like make sure that they had a witness, like they're war boys.
Yeah, I've met him. I've met him like 3 times now. So like we met him a couple times at
The Vegas con.
what are they at the conventions, and then I took Dex a year or so ago, and he was there, and he's like, "You look familiar," and I was like, "Ah!" And he may have just said that, but it made my day.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. That's the only guy. Like I told you, it's like when we were doing interviews with creators and like talking to people. Like that's the only guy that made me nervous. Like literally the only one. Like
you didn't interview him.
No, but like, and that's the thing. It was crazy. Like going up to his table and talking to him, I was like getting the shakes in my hand.
Oh.
Like I'm sitting here interviewing Bendis, Allred, Fraction, and like no problem. I go to talk to Claremont, and all of a sudden I'm like a 10-year-old kid with a crush on a 16-year-old.
He was at Emerald City this year, and there was like a massive line for his table at all times, basically.
Yeah, that's how the Vegas one was. We waited for a while. Dex was like, "Are we almost there?" I'm like, "No, buddy, we're not." He's like, "Oh my god!" Like Dex was over.
Who is this person? He better have candy.
He's like, "Have you never met him before?" I'm like, "No, I've met him twice." And he's like, "Can we go then?"
God damn it, Dex. Get it together. All right, I'll do my list really quick. I'm going to spoil it. I don't have Claremont number 1. Number 3, Jason Aaron, Wolverine and the X-Men. I already admitted that. It's just an all-time book for me. I love it. Remender was my number 4. He was pretty close to Claremont for obvious reasons, all the reasons you said. But number 1, it's Peter David. Exactly.
Peter David, no, Peter David. I can't argue too hard against that.
I love X Factor, his stuff on that book. It's kind of weird. It's interesting that he never did anything besides X Factor and X Factor related stuff for the X-Men stuff, did he?
I don't think so. I was always surprised he never got put on an X-Men book proper.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird to look at how successful he was with X Factor, and he was kind of always lumped into it. Maybe he didn't want to. I don't know, but the dude is just like, he had those characters like so locked in, so perfect, and like he has only purely good stuff in my book. Claremont had some weird stuff in the recent years, so like I'm not saying it demerits on the other stuff, but at the same time, like he hit like 100% of the time in my book. Peter David did, so he gets number 1 for me. All right.
Claremont created the Neo. He gets number 1 for me.
We're going to... All right. Next, 4 favorite X-Men moments. This is going to be tough, but also obvious. We're both going to have the same number 1.
This is a really hard one.
I know. I know I forgot something that I'm going to be super mad at myself for.
Same.
I'll go first. Number 1, the biggest moment basically in comic history for me is Wolverine's adamantium being removed. And I know that doesn't necessarily live up to some of the other historical things, but it was probably the greatest... I've never been more upset about anything in my entire life that involved fictional stories. There will never be anything that tops that in my mind, so it's number 1 for me.
You want me to go next?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you were railing yours off. Number 1 for me is absolutely the adamantium getting torn out.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's hard to speak to how like intense that was if you weren't like a child then.
Yeah, it was hell intense. I was in like 3rd, 4th grade. That was hell intense. And then on the top of it, you knew what you were getting to. On the front, they had the little holographic card, and it was like, oh my god, what is happening?
Yeah.
And yeah, just oh man. And then that whole crossover was just epic. And then for it to end in that way, it was just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely, just again, in virtue of coming in at that point in time and just having that be like the most epic moment that I'd ever seen in a comic book ever to that point in my life.
One thing I do want to say, like, this is kind of confirmation bias, like it's including why, or like the after effects for why it was so important. But Wolverine legit didn't have adamantium for a good while after that, and like I feel like that kind of validates the story beat, because it wasn't like he just had bone claws for like 2 issues. Like he left the X-Men for a while with bone claws. Like he was fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was, I remember him rolling out at the end of Fatal Attractions on his motorcycle. I'm like, when's he gonna come back? My God, what's happening?
Not Wolverine.
He has to stay. Number 2 for me is Return of Colossus and Astonishing. That was just it just floored me. I know it's like a recent one, but at the same time, I'm a huge Astonishing fan, as we'll get to again. I'll just rail off my 3 really quick. I love the moment in Dark Phoenix Saga, or like the larger Dark Phoenix Saga story, when Wolverine's in the sewer versus Hellfire Club, when they're like, you forgot the Wolverine, I'm gonna come slice you up. And it's just like, it's so awesome, and it's so quintessentially Wolverine. And I know there's a lot of Wolverine talk in this, but again, Brandon and I are 90s X-Men fans. And then lastly, Jean Grey's like, I'm gonna second death, first death, the one in Dark Phoenix Saga when she like got blasted, and like that whole thing, the fact that like especially with the conversation between like the Watcher and the Recorder at the end of it, where it's like talking about how she could have lived as a god, but she chose to die as a human. Like it's such a like powerful and poignant moment that really speaks to Claremont's skills as a writer, and it's incredible. All right, what do you got?
My number 2 is Decimation. Like that to me was like the first time in a long time. Because I was in college at that point. That was the first time in a long time an X-Men book had me stop and just think about things for a second. Like, wait a minute, so there's only like 186 left of them. Oh my god! Like, who's left?
Wait, so the moment no more mutants, or is it like when like they're back in the real world?
When they come back from the real world, and there was that Decimation one shot,
Okay.
and just
Well, that's kind of like that's like a story.
well, not the story though, just that moment because so they do no more mutants, and then you don't really know what that means, and then the
Yeah, that's
Decimation
true.
one shot comes out, and you're like, oh my god, all the mutants are gone. Like there's only 187 or whatever left. Like
Yeah.
who's left? And you see Blob all like with the flabby skin, but
Ugh.
no power. Like and just all these people have just been like Jubilee doesn't have powers. Like what?
Yeah.
Like it was just crazy to me.
Best part of that, the most underrated tangentially X-Men related comic, Son of M. When Quicksilver is such an asshole and he tries to get his powers back by using the Terrigen Mist, and he turns into a crazy person, or more of a crazy person.
Yeah, I was gonna say more of
Yeah. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Number 3 for me is in Cassidy's X-Men when you get to see them all come back in the uniform.
Oh yeah.
Like,
When
and
they're
they're
walking
back
out.
in the blue. Yeah, and they're back in the like the blue and yellow, and just Kitty gives that whole speech about like we need to be seen as heroes. Like, yeah, so that moment to me, like, because I mean, I grew to love the Quietly Morrison stuff, but I always wanted just like the full blown colorful X-Men back, and so that was the moment where it finally came back, and it was like, yeah.
Yeah, like that moment really, I just reread Astonishing and it still kills. Like it's just
Yeah.
you get to that part and you're like, hell yeah, this is amazing. Also, I do think it's underrated that team was only really like 5 people, like maybe 6 if you add Armor, and like 7 if you add Lockheed or Agent Brand.
Right.
But I mean, I always thought that like the X-Men teams kind of were better when they were small, because Dark Phoenix Saga was like 6 characters, and then like at the end they added like Angel and Beast and stuff, but still it was tight. Like I think tightness is good. Anyways, what's your last one?
My last one was almost going to be Maggot in Necrotia still being there. Then I was like, you know what might be even better is the Age of Ultron Wolverine coming out of the cave.
Oh my god.
But in the end, I had to go with Days of Future Past, where Wolverine gets blasted and the skeleton's
Oh, yeah.
there. Like,
That's so good.
just so iconic. Like, from the cartoon to the comics, like everything, just iconic. That's one of the coolest images I'd ever seen. Because I was like, oh my god, that's his whole skeleton. That is rad.
I really have to do a quick aside, because I just realized you didn't include Maggot in your 5 favorite non-main X-Men characters, not because you forgot, but probably because you consider him a main X-Men character.
Oh, 100%. He's a main character. He was on the team for a bunch of issues. 100%. Yeah, that has nothing to do with me forgetting him. How dare you, David Harper?
I wanted to point that out, because people were like, wow, I thought he liked Maggot. No, it's because he thinks he's one of the main characters. Oh my god.
I'm convinced.
That's amazing. Incredible. All right.
Yeah.
We're doing 5 best villains. I'm gonna steam through this one because we have a special thing at the end. We gotta get into that. But my picks, I mean, these are gonna be obvious, but at the same time, I feel like there's just a hierarchy for the X-Men villains. Number 1 is Magneto. Number 2 is Apocalypse. 3, Sentinels in general. I'm not going to go Master Mold or something like that, or Nimrod or Bastion. Number 4 is Mr. Sinister, because I love Mr. Sinister and I love his hairstyle. And number 5 is Mojo, because Mojo is amazing. What do you got?
Yes. Dude, our list is so close. All right. Number 1 for me is Magneto. Number 2 is Sentinels, and in particular, the X-Men animated series Sentinels.
Yes.
Number 3 is Apocalypse. Number 4 is Sabretooth, in particular 90s X-Men or 90s cartoon costume / comics. And number 5 is, of course, Mojo. I can love Mojo.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't include Sinister, but it's tough. There are a lot of good X-Men villains.
Yeah, like my top 3 are my top 3. Like that doesn't change.
Right.
And then Sabretooth, I love Sabretooth. And like, yeah, so I think if I had to have cut 2 people at the end there, it'd have been like Mr. Sinister or even the Dark Phoenix. But
Yeah, and Dark Phoenix is interesting because it's like you almost kind of don't want to include her as a villain because it's like
Right.
she was interesting because she was both, like depending on the moment. Like she was so mercurial.
Yep.
Yeah, there was like a lot of characters I like considered including because
Bastion,
yeah. I mean, like Bastion, I feel like Bastion was like super underrated. He was really great. Um,
Onslaught.
yeah, yes. And Shadow King's amazing. Anyways, all right, next. Overall looks. So when I say overall looks, this is like Brandon and I had a debate. We're gonna do costumes, but it's not really just about costumes. Like if you do, Mohawk Storm, like the look is important, but if you just had the costume, it wouldn't be with the look. So, Brandon, did you rank this, or is this just 5 unlisted?
This is a 5 unranked, but I don't even know if I did this right, but I went with what we were talking about, like the version of that character, that iteration. That so in my top 5, do you want me to just roll off all 5?
Do it.
Okay, so I've got Mohawk Storm in there, of course, because she just looks so cool with like the cutoff jacket and the mohawk. Like she just looks so punk and so badass.
She's on my list too.
Yep. Bone Claw Wolverine.
Ooh.
Uh, I just like that was so gnarly. Him just running around like those things would break from time to time. Like, dude's just rad.
Oh man, I couldn't include that. It was just too traumatic for me. I mean, the bones breaking, it's just no.
Too many tears.
Too many. Yeah, it's too heart-wrenching for me. Wolverine was like my second dad. My drunk, really emotionally messed up dad.
Yeah, always smell like cigars.
And man, if you think the worst thing he smells like is cigars, you got another thing coming, Brandon.
I feel like he's the Charles Barkley of the X-Men.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I could see that. But at the same time, Charles Barkley smells a lot better. I guarantee it.
Probably. Maybe.
Well, like, let's just be honest. Wolverine doesn't shower.
Yeah, that's true.
I wonder if his healing factor kind of kills the smell.
Yeah, it just kills off like the smell bacterias.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So, sorry, I'm taking us a huge aside.
That's all right. I'd have to go next, like 90s Cyclops, like pull up his ass Cyclops with the look kind of we were talking about earlier, the X-Men animated series visor, but like not just the costume, but the personality at that time where he was just like a teacher's pet and just an asshole. Like I loved that Cyclops.
I just want to say an underrated part about that costume was the fact that for once it exposed his hair because it made no sense that his head looked the way it did with his hair in there. And
yeah,
I don't know why that always bothered me about like the Dave Cockrum, John Byrne classic costume and everything. I'm like, free that hair. He has beautiful hair. Let him be free.
Yeah, that 90s Cyclops costume is one of my all-time favorite X-Men costumes.
It's really amazing.
It's so iconic with the like
Jim Lee design.
Pockets. Yeah, exactly. Just God, I love that costume. Then I've got Jerry Curl Mullet Bishop.
Of course, I knew he was going to be on there.
Just what an amazing look. Like what an amazing look. You're walking around like that on the street with like plaid shirts. You've got a giant dude with a mullet and a Jerry curl and plaid shirt. And then he would flip over to his costume and he'd wear a big red bandana. Like
I love
that guy is amazing. He is so diverse.
Yeah, it's a really good look. It's like a super underrated look.
Yeah, that mullet just carried him through life for a hot minute, and then as soon as he got rid of it, everything went south. It's like Samson.
Is that 4?
It is. My 5th is the animated series X-Men Wolverine. Like,
yes, classic.
Greatest version of any version of anything. Like, just love it. I go where I want to go and all that shit. Like that cartoon defined who my personality would be growing up. Like I just wanted to be Wolverine, and now for better or worse, I'm in a hole because of him.
He's got like those kind of shoulder pad things. Are those like hard? Do you think those are hard?
I always imagined they would be armored.
Okay, I always thought they were too. I was always like, why would you just armor your shoulders?
It would be great if they were just like, the padding that you put in your shoulders in the 80s.
Oh, yes.
They were
like he's wearing like a blazer, except for just like exposed blazer lining.
Yeah, they're just like little pillows.
That's amazing. All right, my 5 are I love Nightcrawler's look. Nightcrawler is one of my all-time favorite X-Men, and there's a reason why his costume pretty much never changes. 2, I like I know he gets a lot of hate these days, but I love Gambit and I love his old school look with the trench coat and all that stuff like that, and the head sock and everything. The funny thing is like when you take him out of the trench coat and they keep the like the head sock thing, it like makes no sense. I'm like, why is he wearing the head sock? Like it only makes sense in that thing. If you keep him in the trench coat and everything else, keep him with the bow staff, all that jazz. That is all of my business. Maybe my favorite costume, and I'm kind of surprised he didn't have this, Jim Lee's 90s Rogue costume with like the flight jacket and the that whole look, like the card from the X-Men series that Jim Lee did was just unbelievable. And then Jean Grey Phoenix, the green one with the yellow and everything like that, not Dark Phoenix, although Dark Phoenix is pretty baller too. I love that. And then lastly is Mohawk Storm. I mean, like that's the amazing thing though, is like generationally, like their costumes, like era to era, actually work really well. Like there's not a lot of downside in there. I'm trying to think of whose costume is genuinely ridiculous, and I know I'm probably forgetting somebody obvious, but I can't think of anything.
Kitty when she was Sprite.
Yes, that was not good. Actually, and Dazzler's original look was pretty ridiculous too.
Ooh, ridiculously awesome.
All right. Lastly, 5 favorite X-Men stories. They can be one shots, crossovers, arcs, whatever. Did you rank yours?
I did not.
Okay, that's fine. I ranked mine.
Okay,
I'm gonna do it. Are you ready?
do it, and I'll figure mine out.
5. Morrison's New X-Men with Quietly and Ethan Van Sciver, Igor Corday, etc., etc. 4. Dark Phoenix Saga because it's Dark Phoenix Saga. 3. Dark Angel Saga because it's the best Dark Blank Saga, and I'm saying that I did it, Brandon. I'm saying Dark Angel Saga is better than Dark Phoenix Saga. 2.
Ooh.
Age of Apocalypse because it's freaking Age of Apocalypse and it's maybe the most important story in the history of my life besides number 1, which is Astonishing X-Men, because I feel like Whedon and Cassidy really actually kind of made like the most pure X-Men story ever, and like the fact that it was all built around Kitty Pryde made just so much sense in my head. And it's just the core team is perfect, like the Cure, the Bullet going through the planet, Kitty sacrificing herself, everything like that is just so good. And Colossus was returned, obviously. Also, really good Wolverine. His like obsession with beer and his kind of monosyllabic nature kind of fits the character a little bit better than talking good and whatnot. So I mean, I love it. He gets the character. The characters are done so well. Cassidy is just a monster. Laura Martin, I'm pretty sure, was the colorist on it, and she's incredible. I guess she was Laura Dupuy back then. But what's your 5?
All right, so I got mine ordered. Number 5 would be Onslaught. I don't care what anybody says. I enjoyed the hell out of that. You had Sentinels taking over New York, and just like all these heroes died, which you knew they were going to come back, but at the time it was still cool.
And I do want to say that the build up to Onslaught was maybe the best part of Onslaught.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Like you get the trash Juggernaut, and you're like, what happened to him? Who could do this to the Juggernaut besides everybody? But they did a good job of selling the fact that nobody could do it.
That's the underrated part. It's like nobody can stop the Juggernaut, and you're like, well, I mean, besides like basically everyone in the history of the Marvel universe.
By the time you've seen him in the 6th version of whatever you've seen him, whether it's the cartoon or the comics or whatever, you know he's actually the stoppable Juggernaut, exactly. Not the unstoppable Juggernaut. Like, so there's no surprise there. But they did a great job of selling the fact that he got trashed. Number 4 for me would be Messiah Complex. I loved Messiah Complex, even though it really just kind of destroyed Bishop for a good 8 years.
I can't believe you listed it, if only because it turned Bishop into a villain.
Yeah, but it was good. Like they should have carried it further. He should have been a real asshole. But
he was kind of an ass. I guess he was doing it for a good reason. He was trying to kill a child for a reason.
I still hope that randomly he pops up and just caps Hope in the back of the head, and he's like, "Gotcha."
Well, that's dark.
I was right. Yeah, I'm just waiting for it. Like that storyline's unresolved. Number 3 for me is Uncanny X-Force Volume 1. That whole initial run, because it really does just tell one giant story all the way across. And the Dark Angel Saga, all that, just, oh my God, like one of the all-time best runs in an X-Men book for me was that Uncanny X-Force run. And that just story and the long boil that Rick Remender did to get to that point was just incredible. Number 2 for me is Age of Apocalypse because, well, the Age of Apocalypse. Like this was before like for us, this is before the internet was a huge thing, like for all you young whippersnappers, and you didn't have like instant access to what was happening. So at the time, I was living on base and getting these things at the BX or the PX on the bases, and I was genuinely like, wait a minute. So are they really like? Is this the X-Men Forever now?
Well, and the underrated thing is like they had never done anything like this before. So
No.
the first time you do this, it's like it's so much different than it is now. If you did it now, you're like, whatever, they do this shit all the time. But back then, it's like, are the X-Men broken? Are they done?
Yeah, because all the titles are gone. All of a sudden, they're looking crazy. Like I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Like it was just for my age and just for the time. Like it was just perfect. And number one is Fatal Attractions. I just love Fatal Attractions. Absolutely love Fatal Attractions. The whole storyline. Magneto getting his claws ripped out, Colossus joining the other side. Like that was the first real big like X-Men crossover I came into with the comics. So that'll always have a special place. Plus, I was big on like as you were collecting the trading cards, and the Fatal Attractions trading cards were always so dope because it was mostly Wolverine just getting adamantium ripped out from different artist perspectives. I just love that.
Fatal Attractions cards. I don't remember those. I remember the holograms and I remember the X-Men cards that Jim Lee did. I don't remember Fatal Attractions cards.
Yeah, so like they weren't like a card set for Fatal Attractions, but all of the X-Men cards at the time, like the trading cards, whether you got like Fleer Ultra or any of that.
Oh, when they had like the moments and
Yeah,
stories and everything.
exactly. Like those cards were always the raddest because it was always like another version of an artist rendering of Wolverine just getting destroyed. Like I would always just open that and be like, God, there are so many amazing views of how badly he got killed.
I probably knew about those at one point, but it was so traumatic that I just deleted it from my memory.
Oh, dude, I have them all. I have these like I want to say they're like 94 or 95 Flare Ultra cards that are still in the pack. Like I bought a box of them at Bosco's on Diamond when they were closing down.
Yeah.
And got them for like $10. And I slow open one every few months. I've had them for years now. I only open like a pack every once in a while. It's so cathartic. It just like talk about getting a blast of your childhood just out of nowhere.
I love that you're like engaging with it like it's a bottle of fine wine from like the 1800s. You're like, I can only drink this slowly because I will never have it again after this. It's such an incredible.
And they just get better with time. I swear to God.
It's incredible. I love it. All right, so to close, Brandon and I are going to do something very special. It's an X-Men fantasy draft. Marvel's doing its fresh start right now, and they haven't announced the X-Men books, and there's a big reason for that. Brandon and I are now the X-Men line editors, and we're going to be doing a book each. For each book, we're going to be selecting a team leader, 7 team members, a writer, an artist, and the title of the book. And so basically, we have to make our own teams. It's going to operate like a fantasy draft, like with a snake draft, where I'm going to pick, then Brandon's going to pick, then I pick twice, and then Brandon, et cetera, et cetera. The big thing is like we can't steal each other's picks. So once something is taken, it is off the board. That means if I take Wolverine, Wolverine's gone, so to speak. It depends on the version, I guess. Brandon, what will you be taking with your first pick?
Are we no longer doing colorists and covers then?
Let's do it. Let's do colorists and covers too.
Okay. All right. So if I have to take one thing off the board first, my number one draft pick is going to be Age of Ultron Wolverine.
Oh, no, fuck you. No way.
Yes.
Wait. So does that mean proper Wolverine is like still available?
100%.
All right. Okay. Then my first.
I have a story I want to tell, David Harper.
Okay. Hold on a second. I'm going to write this down to make sure that I can get our teams right at the end. Okay. So my first pick is going to be real Wolverine because I'm not a Philistine who chooses Age of Ultron Wolverine. Okay. Let's see.
We've got to know what he was doing when he came out of that cave, David.
So basically you're choosing him so you can create whatever exactly happened to him there. Based off of this, though, that basically is saying that my Wolverine doesn't actually exist.
No, but they do exist both. That's why this story is interesting.
Okay. So is he just a regular character for you? Is he the team leader?
No, he's not a leader. He's just a character.
Okay. All right. What's your next pick? Wait, no, never mind. It's snake draft, so I got it. All right. So my next pick is I'm going to go Nightcrawler because Nightcrawler is I'm going to say, Brand, this is important.
Okay.
You ready for it?
Yep.
Nightcrawler is the best X-Men ever. He's the most important X-Men ever. He is the X-Men. Without Nightcrawler, you have no X-Men. I'm saying it.
Interesting.
Yep. All right. So do you have any comments on that?
Just interesting.
All right. Who's your next pick?
My next pick is going to be. Oh, see, I love my list because I don't think you're going to take any of them. So now for me, it's more of like,
Well, you picked Age of Ultron Wolverine to start. You've started at a very weird place. I don't know
yes,
where you're going to go.
I'm telling you, it doesn't get any less weird.
Okay.
To keep that trend and just to keep pace with you, my number 2 pick is Nocturne,
Oh my God. What the hell?
Nightcrawler's
That is amazing.
daughter.
Was that going to be a pick before I picked Nightcrawler?
Absolutely. I can send you a picture of the paper that my dog ate that has my whole draft. I drafted this out, thought this whole thing out a while ago when we were talking about doing it with Declan.
Well, I just want to say really quick. Let's talk about format really quick and how we plotted this out. I'm going to tell you how I figured out my team, and then you tell me how you figured out your team. I actually broke mine into roles. I have team leader, brawler, powerhouse, telepath, rogue, and like a rogue, not rogue the character, youth, genius, and then a David pick, which are basically wild cards. So
Nice.
that's mine. I actually, and the thing is I wanted to include a bunch of characters that I really liked, but I was constantly thinking of team chemistry because chemistry is super important for the X-Men. So like that's how I did it. What is your strategy?
My strategy was looking at it, I originally went real basic, like a lot of like classic X-Men characters, your predominant characters that are around over and over again.
So you're
But the
saying
more
that
I
I'm
thought,
basic, basically. You're slandering me in the
yeah,
process of saying your process. I hate you.
well, I mean, let me just hand you your pumpkin spice latte and then we'll continue discussing.
I'm a basic.
Um, yeah. So like then I got to thinking like if I ever really got to do an X-Men book, I don't know if I'd want to jump on one of the 2 main books right away. I want a book that I can tell real stories with real implications, like an Exiles book or an Ecstatics book or something like that,
Oh,
where you could do like drastic changes. Like that's the kind of X-Men book I'd want to have. And then from
so you
there,
want to have a fresh start, like a proper fresh start.
yeah, I want to have the whole sandbox available to me. I want to be able to do whatever the hell I want. And so that would be my guiding principle was like and then it was like what story would I want to see told? If I was an editor and I was trying to get a writer and I was pitching this like what would I want to see? And so this is that.
You're fucking doing Exiles, aren't you?
I am.
Oh my God. All right. I'm just going to write that. You don't have to make your next pick, but I knew you were going to do that.
Yep.
I'm just going to reveal that. But what's your next pick?
Besides Exiles?
Yeah, besides Exiles.
Well, since we're doing that anyway, let's just go ahead and throw it out there. My leader is Blink.
I knew it. Blink was on my list. That's she wasn't a for sure shot, but she was on there. What category do I have her on? I think she was just a David pick. She was a David pick. I kind of knew you were going to do Exiles. I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't have more Exiles presence on this list in general. So I because you did title, I'm going to do title.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. I'm going super basic. I'm not even doing Uncanny. I'm just doing straight up X-Men. So that's my title. And let's see. I'm going to do my telepath just in case you go this route. And I'm going to do Quentin Quire. That's my telepath. All right, back to you for 2.
All right. So the next on my list, let's go ahead and get him out of the way. X-Man.
Oh my God, yes, yes.
I went ahead and threw him on the list just because if I'm going to do an Exiles team, and I think in the end we're going to talk about what our stories would be, so I don't want to get too into that, I guess. But he's an important part to play in a lot of where I'd like to go with my stories. And then the next one, see, I love my list because I know you're not taking any of my people.
Maybe you should go creators then.
Yeah, creators. I don't think you're taking any of my creators either. Let's go covers. For covers, I'm taking Mike McCone, just
Ooh.
because I want a classic, epic Exiles cover artist.
Yes.
And I love having Mike McCone's art on the front of an Exiles book. That just seems right.
Mm-hmm. All right. So wait, hold on. You did X-Man. Okay. X-Man. I just want to say he's like Gambit. He has undeserved hate throughout the years. X-Man is amazing. Nate Gray's my boy. I love you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I'm going to go straight creative team. My writer is Chip Zdarsky.
Nice.
And I don't know if you're reading his like Spectacular Spider-Man or Marvel Toon one, but they're both amazing. And like people might think of him as the funny guy, but his stuff is actually super poignant, and he does really good superheroics. I actually think he's maybe Marvel's best working writer right now. So my artist is Russell Dauterman, now free of Mighty Thor. He's now doing the X-Men.
Nice.
All right, who are your 2 picks? Go.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to. Okay, so for my writer, I decided to go with somebody who I thought had kind of the imagination to just kind of do something crazy with an Exiles book, but also somebody who's a comic fan that probably could appreciate the intricacies of how an Exiles book should really work within the tapestry of the Marvel Universe. So I went with Gerard Way.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then for artist, I
I know
went
who you're gonna pick.
John Boy Myers.
I did not know who you were gonna pick.
I love his art style. I think he does a real clean look. McCone had a real clean look as well, and I think John Boy Mars. I'm a diehard fan of John Boy Mars at this point. Like I love his stuff. Ever since I saw what he was going to do with like Teen Titans and stuff like that on his short-lived run on that, like that guy's art just gets better all of the time. And it's commercially appealing, but also has enough, going on in it that it's aesthetically pleasing for somebody who's read a lot of comics. He's a great storyteller. And I think him and Gerard Way could do some fun stuff.
I honestly thought you were going to pick Allred.
Nope.
All right, so I'm going to go with my team leader. My team leader is Rogue. She's not my Rogue. She is Rogue. Then I'll go with my I already have my Rogue. That's Nightcrawler. Let's see. Who am I going to have next? My Genius. My Genius is the classic Genius. It's Beast because it's got to be Beast. I love Beast. Like Beast is like up there with Nightcrawler as like the most essential X-Men to me, which is funny because he also was an Avenger and was a Defender. So yeah. Anyways, next two picks for you. Go.
Okay, my next two. So for my colorist, I don't know how to say his last name at all. Ramadan.
Well, I might be able to say.
It's his first name's Jim. Last name is Charalampidis. Charalampidis.
Wait, do that again?
Yep. Charalampidis.
Okay, I have no idea, and I don't think I know him. Where is he from?
So he's done some stuff with John Boy Myers.
Oh, okay.
So when I was looking over some of the my favorite stuff by Jim or John Boy Myers, it seemed like a lot of the stuff was done by Jim, the coloring, and so I just figured might as well keep that together.
So yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I mean it's you want to find something that's complementary to your artist. So
yeah. I'd be less concerned about having a splashy name as much as somebody who complements them really well.
Exactly. I mean that's that's really what you want, somebody who's going to like bring the best out in the book overall. So yeah, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Next pick, go.
Next pick is Bishop.
Bishop. Oh my God. Wait, so are we having a specific iteration or is it just classic?
Just Bishop as he is now.
Okay.
Yep. All these characters would be, for the most part, just as they are at this moment.
I can't wait till you have Hope Summers in the book just so you can have him kill her.
It's coming.
All right. So my picks next. I'm going to go with my David pick, which, okay. I'm audibling because now you've made it really easy for me to do whatever I want. My David pick is going to be Pete Wisdom because fuck it. Why not? I love Pete Wisdom. And then I'm going to do my youth. And my youth is going to be Armor. Because I love Armor. Armor is amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. I like that her arc of graduating to like the major leagues is one of the really underrated parts of Astonishing. And especially because they highlight the young characters fairly well in like, with the whole Cure thing and everything. And so she is just amazing. And Pete Wisdom, I already talked about him because he's just my jam. All right, next pick. Go.
Am I doing two more again?
You got two, but you only have 3 picks left. I mean, 4? 3? What do you got?
3 picks left, yeah. Okay. So my next one is Ruby, Cyclops and Emma's daughter from an alternate timeline.
Oh my God.
You remember her?
This is just amazing. Like I was like really carefully picking these characters thinking there's no, I have like backups, like 5 backups for each of my things. I'm like, Brandon's going to steal some of my stuff. You're not even close. Why would I even think you would do that?
No. And once I get done doing this, I can tell you my reserves, and you probably would never have taken any of my reserves either.
Oh my God.
So,
okay.
But yeah, so Ruby, because I think that's an awesome character, and for an Exiles book where you could dive a little more into her, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Nice. I like it.
And then my next one is Aaliyah Bishop from X-Men: The End. That was Bishop and Death Scream. Not Death Scream.
Deathstrike? Lady Deathstrike?
No, Lilandra's sister.
Deathcry?
Deathcry. And Bishop and Deathcry's daughter from the X-Men The End. I thought that would be a nice little addition because then you'd have the father-daughter dynamic of Bishop and Aaliyah Bishop. You also have Aaliyah coming from a position where all of time had ended basically in a terrible way for the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah.
I think I have my last two picks. No, I have colorist and cover artist, and I have one. So I have Iceman, and then my color artist is gonna be Matt Wilson because he's coloring Russell Dodderman already, and they're perfect together. But I want to like Iceman's my actually, believe it or not, my powerhouse because underrated fact about Iceman, Omega Mutant, he's amazing. Like that dude can crush and great character. Just I love everything about Iceman. He's amazing. All right, you only have one pick left.
One pick.
Okay.
And it's absolutely fitting that my number one last pick is Maggot.
Well, I mean, I couldn't believe he didn't
Why
come
the
yet.
hell would it not be?
What if I stole him? I thought about just stealing him.
If you'd have stolen him, then I would have had to have picked from Lifeguard, Slipstream, Thunderbird 4, that Neil Shahara guy we were talking about earlier, Dupe, Morph, or Layla Miller. So
I'm like sitting here shaking my head because your picks are so ridiculous.
That was literally, I'll send you a picture. I've got reserved.
How would you decide between them?
What's that?
I said, how would you even decide between them?
It would have been really hard. Like,
oh my god,
Lifeguard, Slipstream, and Thunderbird 4 have to be together. Like, the three of them have to come in together, otherwise it doesn't work. And that's why they couldn't make the team, because I just couldn't get rid of three other people.
See, originally I was going to do Kitty and Colossus because they have to go together, and then I was thinking about doing Madrox and Layla Miller because they have to go together. And so I had like that's a tricky thing. Part of me is I didn't want to just have perfectly set relationships, and I feel like having people like Pete Wisdom and Iceman in there because like I don't really feel like Iceman has like a relationship with Quentin Quire or like even a particularly strong one with like a lot of the main cast because like he kind of comes and goes a lot. So like I feel like having wild cards in there is important. So my God, I think I only have one pick left, and it's my cover artist, and it's Julian Totino Tedesco because that dude is like the best working cover artist right now, in my opinion. The dude's a boss. Love his stuff. So I'm gonna recap really quick, and listeners, I want you to tweet at Brandon and I at Slice Fried Gold for me, at Brandon Burpee for Brandon, and let us know whose team you thought was better. Brandon's team is the Exiles. Team leaders Blink with Age of Ultron, Wolverine, Nocturne, X-Man, Bishop, Ruby, Aaliyah Bishop, and Maggot as the team with writer Gerard Way, artist John Boy Myers, and colorist, I can't even try it,
Jim Charlampinas.
Yeah, that. And then cover artist Mike McCone. And then what is it about?
So basically, the idea is we've had so many restarts, refixes. We've got X-Men from the past coming to the forward. There's all these continuity issues in time and space that need to be fixed, especially coming out of things like Battle World and stuff like that, where all these people are popped up like Old Man Wolverine who shouldn't be here. So they basically
call him Old Man Wolverine.
What's that?
I love how you called him Old Man Wolverine.
That's his name.
Old Man Logan.
Yeah, Old Man Wolverine.
Whatever.
So like they're out there trying to fix these things, these continuities. So I always thought a good Booster Gold book would have been him going through and fixing continuity errors in DC's continuity. I would do that with this team. Same kind of idea. They can die, things like that, but there'd be a whole long boiling thing about this Age of Ultron Wolverine. Where did he come from? What is he here for? What was he doing for like 8 years after he walked out of a cave naked? Where did he get clothes? Things like that. So it would basically be a continuity fixer for the X-Men side of the Marvel Universe.
Oh, that makes so much sense given the fact that you've been on like a bent about like time stream being fucked up for like a decade at this point for Marvel.
Yes, I have dedicated myself to fixing the time stream someday.
It really has to be kind of messed up, at least, given everything that's happened to it. Like, you think that things have to be a little messed up. At the same time, that's, I believe, what Reed Richards and his family are doing currently. But at the same time, you're going to do it right, and that's important. I do want to say, I think Booster Gold actually had a comic where they did that, didn't he?
They did a little bit of that, but like it was never anything that really fixed anything long-standing in continuity. Like he kind of screwed around in time and space. But
yeah, it wasn't really like fixing things so much as Quantum Leap with Booster Gold, I think.
Yeah, and I think this book could be like kind of a Exiles meets Black Science type deal.
Ooh, that sounds really good. Yeah,
Mhm.
yours is way better than mine. Mine is X-Men. It's back to basics. They're in a school that's not in Central Park. It's got the school element. It's gonna have space. It's gonna have everything. It's just getting back to the way the X-Men always were. But at the same time, like I feel like while that is a done idea, it's a story that's been told. There are stories that can be told. It just you need fresh perspective on it, which is why my team is Chip Zdarsky, who I think brings an outside the box perspective while being excellent at character work and telling classic superhero stories and having a lot of personality to it. Russell Dowderman, in my opinion, is the best Marvel superhero artist around. And the fact that he's like, I feel like he should be drawing a flagship book, which is why he's drawing my flagship book. Matt Wilson coloring him because he's perfect with him. And on covers, Julian Totino Tedesco, because in my opinion, he's the best working right now. And like you need a classic team for a classic book, which is why I feel like Rogue has really grown into a team leader, and I think she's really fantastic. And she also kind of bridges the gap between the X-Men and the rest because of all the Uncanny Avengers stuff that she's done. And my team with Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Quentin Quire, Beast, Pete Wisdom, Armor, and Iceman has like a nice mix of like wild cards plus like classic characters that enough where I feel like there's gonna be a lot of interesting relationships in there. Plus, there's gonna be the school involved. So I got the classic. Brandon's got he's gonna destroy my comic by fixing the timeline book,
I'm just gonna
which is great. Let us know what you think. Brandon, I like your team. I appreciate you going completely outside the box. I don't know why I expect anything else.
Yeah, it's kind of got to be that way at this point.
Well, I mean, it's the Brandon Burpee brand. It's the
That's
it's
right.
like the Triple B. You got to fight Big Baller Brand for locking that down, but it's still good.
Like I said, it changed my life. I go where I want to go.
All right, Brandon, that's been the X-Men Power Rankings. Thank you for coming on and talking all things X-Men.
Anytime, man.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with my pal Brandon Burpee. You can find him on Twitter at Brandon Burpee. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you can get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Jason Assey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Dan Lee, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Benjamin Birdie, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abbott, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMnacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD. Follow it on Twitter at @sketchcomic or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from the album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening and tune in next week for another episode.